Hero's Journey.
All right, we're here to talk about this really cool Starfall commission that's intended to look like some sort of tool in the Star Wars universe. So this was a fully custom job that Nick at Starfall did for his customer, and they had been on a wait list for a while, so they had some features that they wanted. So I think Nick did a pretty good job. So let's hop down to the table. We'll talk about a little bit more of those features, what I did with the install, what's going on with the electronics, a little bit of functionality, and then we'll come back out. I'm gonna go over some features with this blade in, and then we'll wrap it up. So thanks for checking it out. All right, we're looking at this custom Starfall Sabers commission. The client was looking for something that looked in universe as kind of a tool that doubled as a saber. So I've been calling this the Hydro Spanner or Spanner. I'm not really sure if that's in universe or not, but the little appointments here Nick did really make this look like a kind of an in-universe tool with these aluminum grip strips, this cannon. Let's see if we can show this little dial here that does work. It's the micro sync, so it came off some sort of camera device. I'm not sure where this thin neck comes from, but I think it looks pretty cool with the little grill marks. So yeah, we do have a 12mm KR dual tactile in brass that Nick suggested for our button operation. So the left side is power and our right side is aux. So if you're looking at that, left side is power, right side's aux. And then to get to your blade plug or to tighten down your blade, this top set screw on this box greebly will just come undone. There is a blade plug provided from Nick with a cool little nut that looks kind of like a turbine. And then this is sporting a CCSabers illuminated PCB for the neopixel. On the back side, we do have a retention screw here. Now it's not the same as this tool, but just know that that's holding the rotary PCB connector and neopixel connector, so do not mess with this one. It's on the back side, so you shouldn't have any trouble. And then to get to everything, we have a fully removable chassis here. On the back side, we'll use our provided Allen key. We'll remove the set screw for the pommel. The pommel comes all the way off, so just be mindful of that. Kind of keep this over a table if you're going to be operating this. And then the chassis will come out. I'll set this down for a second. We do have the fully removable system by using the Shtok Rotary PCB solution. So that's our pin size with our pogos. And we have this fully removable chassis. This is the standard Starfall chassis, but it has been reduced in diameter to fit into this grip. So we shaved a little bit off for that reason, and because this was printed in a silver silk PLA, I am using some Captain tape here to keep the Proffie board in place. But you don't need to move it up to get access to the micro SD. You just need a 90-degree cable, and you'll be able to program that. I was able to do that to apply some tweaks to my config once I had this fully wired up. And just had to kind of dial in my volume and clash settings and stuff like that. So if you do need access to the SD card, I suggest tweezers to pull it out. You can use the micro USB port, but you'll get slow transfer rates. So here we've got the PCB side of the rotary connector set. We're sporting a 24mm KR bass speaker, and I did use silicone to fully encase it so the sound is a little bit better. We are providing an 18650 battery with a custom battery wrap. We've got our high amp kill switch, our Proffie V2. The config is on the SD card. This does support the Starfall sound font package, 8 sound fonts, and then the last preset is a battery level indicator. Now we can pop the battery out either with our finger, or I like to just kind of use my 2 fingers up against these, and then it'll just pop out. So we've got positive and negative indicator in the tray. Obviously spring side your negative, so flat part of your battery goes against the spring, nipple to nipple. And then to turn it on, we hit our kill switch.
Several repairs needed in core.
And so that's the sound font that I provided here at the end. And then we would just slide this in any direction we needed to, and then we'll use the pommel to push it fully in. Now what you want to do, as you can see, it's not quite cinched yet, and then you'll just press down with your finger, hit your set screw. Oops. Now don't put a whole lot of torque on it, so don't use the long or the short side and really torque on it. You just need to make sure it's cinched down. I don't know if I did that. And then we can ignite it with the power button. Now, again, this is that workbench font, so it's going to have all kinds of weird little announcements. To advance forward in the sound fonts, while the blade is off, we hit aux.
Battery level.
So now we're at the very end of all the presets. That's our battery level indicator. I'll demonstrate it with the blade in, but the blade will have a little bubble somewhere along the blade from the tip to the hilt. And then the further out it is, the more charged it is, the closer it is to the emitter, the less charged it is. So then we'll just move forward.
Starfall.
So now we're at the beginning of the presets for the Starfall font. We do have gesture control, so you can twist on and twist off. There's those PCBs igniting. Now the PCB is just going to duplicate what's going on in the blade. And then we do have thrust on, which is a little difficult to show here on the table, so I'll try to show that with the blade in. But to move forward, just hit aux. To move backwards, point the hilt down and hit aux. And then for the track, we have two different modes. We have track player mode, and then we have just regular start the track. So in order to start the track, we want to hit hold the power button for 1 second and release. If we do that with the hilt kind of horizontal, then we'll get into track player mode. So let me do that real quick. So it's going to start playing all of the tracks in the track folder in alphabetical order. But if you rotate the hilt, it'll advance. So we're rotating to the right. If we rotate to the left, we'll go backwards. Now, if we want to accept that, then we hit power. We'll get that little beep. So now we can actually move the saber around and let the track keep playing. To turn it off, we'll hold power again for a second and release. But normally what we would want to do, and I've assigned a track for each font or preset, is to make sure that the saber is upright and then hold power for a second. And it will play the track that I've designated. So we can also start the track with the blade in, and I'll demonstrate that here in a second, but we can only do that when the blade is ignited and it's pointing straight up. Now, everything else will just be will operate the same when the blade is off, but we can start a track while the blade is on. We just have to be upright, and it will only play the designated track. So when we're done and we want to button everything back up, we'll undo the pommel, pull the chassis out, hit the kill switch, put it back in, and then we can either pull the battery out to charge it, or if we're just going to put it back on a stand or something, then we'll just close this all back up. So anything I have not covered will be in a printout here, and I've already kind of sent the customer some correspondence about how to use the Proffie. This will be a primer for that, and I'll try to show some other features with the blade in here in a second. So that'll pretty much covers it. Okay, so we've talked about all of the internals and how to operate, for the most part, the chassis and the Proffie, the switch. I did already have this blade in, but just a note to the customer, this is somewhat of a shallow blade depth because we have our button right here. So we're only talking about maybe 1 inch of blade depth. So when you do go to use this set screw, make sure you're tightening pretty well so that there's no play with the pogo pins. Now you don't need to jam the blade down on to the pogo pins. You can just set it down, let gravity do the work, but do make sure you tighten down so that the blade is firmly in place. This is a 7/8 diameter blade, programmed the Proffie for a 32 inch, which we have here. Now I do have a KR pixel stick in this particular blade. And so this is programmed to have that particular number of pixels. So if you have a blade with, like, let's say BTF strips, it will work just fine as well. The coloring may be, and the brightness may be a little bit different, but this is a pretty good blade to demo with. So with that in mind, To start it up, like I mentioned down below, we've got left for power, right for aux. To move forward in the presets, we'll hit aux. Or to go backwards,
Hero's Journey.
we'll point the hilt down. And then we do have gesture control. We have twist on and twist off. Again, that's like revving a motorcycle handle. You'll do a quick turn and turn back. And then we have thrust on. So let me demonstrate twist on real quick. Okay, so we just start up and then twist off. And then thrust on is kind of a horizontal motion. Sometimes I have a little trouble with it, but you just kind of stab or you can pull. So we do that and then we get a thrust on. Now with gesture control, you will jump into battle mode. And battle mode just means you don't need to hold the button to engage lockups. So the moment you clash your saber, you can see we're in a lockup. We move it around a little bit until we pull it away. But if we don't want to do that, then just hit the button. And now a clash is just a clash. And if you do want to lock up, you need to hold either button while you clash the saber. And a lockup can also just be tip effects. So when we go to do our melt, we'll do the same thing, but we'll be horizontal. There we go. And then the longer we hold it, the more animated it'll get. You can see it's rippling there. If we twist it, we can get different colors until we let go. Now that will happen automatically when we're horizontal if we're in battle mode. Same thing if we're gonna do a drag, we'll point the hilt down, hold the button, and then clash the saber until we let go. So, and that one, it'll vary depending on which preset you are on. So, I mentioned down below as well, there's a track player mode. So when the blade is off, if we're not pointed upright and we hold power for 1 second, it'll start playing automatically a list of all the tracks I've uploaded to the SD card. And if we rotate, we can pick one, but we have to press the power button to accept it. Now I can move it around. But if we want to play the track that I've designated for each preset, then we hold the blade upright, hold it for a second, and then we'll start playing. We can do a track while the blade is on, so let me do that real quick. But we can only do it upright. This one's a little bit quiet. And then we turn it off by being upright and holding it for a second. Now, with the blade on, that same holding for a second will be a force effect, and you'll hear either a sound effect or a quote, depending on which font you're on, and then a little ripple effect for however long that effect goes off. So let me do that real quick. So I'm not pointing up, I'm just pointing around, hold power for a second, and then we get that sound, that whoosh sound effect. Do that again. And I'm starting to hear a little crackle, which means my battery's low. So when you get this saber, I'll hopefully have the battery charged, but don't be alarmed if you hear crackling. That just means the battery needs to be charged. If we want to check the battery level when we're not on the battery level preset, we can hold aux and tap power. Again, the blade needs to be off.
Battery level 57%.
But that same button combination, holding aux and tapping power, is also when we're on how we get color change. So we get that little sound.
Red.
And now when we rotate,
Red, dark orange, orange, gold.
and I do have it telling you which colors.
Green, yellow, yellow.
So let's say we wanted that. So now it's saved. It took a little second there because it was writing to the card. But now we can move it around and turn it off. And it will remember that color when we turn back on. Now I'm going to put it back to green because that's what this font is supposed to be.
Red, green.
And now we'll have to. So again, that's color change mode. That will change depending on which font you are. Now I do have an extra font at the end that I don't know if color change works because I've never used that blade style. So we'll check that out in a moment. But to move forward, so now we're on Ruin, and Ruin is the only sound font with a preon that I've programmed. If you add fonts later on and you borrow the styles or you build your own styles, you can do whatever you want for the preon. But provided there's only this one, and the only way to get the preon is to hit the power button. If we do a gesture control, we're just going to bypass it. But let me show that real quick. So you heard that kind of millisecond little power up. We saw that go from red to white, and then it went out. We got a slow power off there. But if we gesture on, we're not going to get that. It's just going to go straight into the ignition. So let me twist on. So it just goes straight into our ignition. Moving on.
Reconcile.
So on this last font of the Starfall collection, that color change will not work because this is the Cornhorn sound font and it's based on the book. It will just jump between two colors. And this is kind of in line with the lore behind the Cornhorn book. So he had like a dual phase crystal. So it's going to start off in white. We got that little glitchy. And it kind of sounds like a speeder bike. But now when we hit color change, that's holding aux and tapping power. It's going to wipe into this light purple color. And it will remember that too if you turn the saber off. But I'm going to go ahead and take it back. So it's just changing that color. Okay, so for the client, I did provide an extra sound font here just before we get to the battery level preset.
Welcome back.
And this is, I think, based on things that happen on the workbench when you're in Jedi Fallen Order. So this is not going to operate like a normal blade. Actually, when you ignite it, it's not even going to ignite the blade. What's going to happen is it's going to go in like this diagnostic mode. I'll send you a video link that kind of goes over all of the effects, but I'll just try to demonstrate some of it here. But basically, it's going to do different things when you swing it and when you clash it and when you use the blaster blocks with the aux button. And then the full blade will ignite when you hold lockup. So, and then you'll see what I'm talking about here in a second. So right now it's barely lighting, but as we move, more of it lights up and get these cool little sounds, right? But if we clash it,
Please handle the call with care.
so, right? And then if we use our blaster block,
Repair failed. Interrupted by
so and it'll just keep doing these random things.
This is no time to practice your deflecting skills. Please stay focused.
So all these little things.
Completed. Excessive impact can cause damage. Excessive impact can cause damage to core internals.
Okay, so I'm going to do a lockup now by holding power.
Core timing subroutine.
Now,
Easily adjust the core frequency.
it has these cool sound effects that also, I don't know how well they're showing up on camera, but with each little sound, you got these blinking things. So that's the workbench sound font. So like I said, I'll send you a video and you can see what's going on. But now,
Battery level.
so this is where we're at with the battery. Now, if I do that again, it's probably going to tell me like we're at 30% instead of 50.
Battery level 14%.
Yeah, that's why we're hearing. I'm hearing clipping right now. So I'll definitely charge this battery before I send this out. But you can see what I'm talking about. This bubble is down close to the hilt. It will start off here. I think it's either green or blue, and then as it depletes, or that's fully charged, and as it depletes, it'll go from that color down to red. So we're in this yellow range. Anyway, that's your saber. If you have any questions, feel free to email me. Again, I have a printout here that goes over all the other functions that's not covered in this video, most of which I've already sent you a link for. And you probably have been studying some of that, and it will make more sense once you actually have the saber in your hand. So I really hope you like this. I think Nick did a fantastic job. It really looks like something you might see in a tool shed in the Star Wars universe. So yeah, let me know if you have any questions, and thanks for checking this out.